other types of radiation, how it impacts biological materials, even while passing through matter or an object, and also varying changes to the Finance Act regarding radiation means both ionizing and non-ionizing. So these little things of how they make the change in the acts and updating changes because of the answers have changed to the same questions as before. We're going to go again, cell phone towers, trust, legal accountability. There's a big difference between a guideline versus a standard. And we saw a lot that this has been interchanged by parties, including the previously adopted Department of Health, incorrectly. And what we need to do, or very important here, is that understand, as defined by the WHO, the previous documents, the difference of legal accountability between a guideline and a standard. A guideline is a voluntary instrument, right? It's a recommendation, it's not legally binding, meaning that you're advised to not go over 60 kilometers an hour in a residential zone, but you're not legally mandated to abide by it. But it's a guideline, you must abide by it. So it cannot be called a standard if it's just does not have a binding instrument, is not being monitored, cannot be tested, cannot be also enforced on by law to ensure that people follow this trust and accountability that occurs. Again, Batupela principles. We want to make sure we keep to those promises. It's keeping a standard. So when persons confuse the two, you can use this document, this report, to help them better understand these are differences, this is what's lacking. Let's work together on bringing your standard, what you call a standard, that's actually implemented as a guideline, to be a standard correctly. So this is what we saw in municipalities, that they would call and say that they're using these standards, but they're actually guidelines, and they do not meet the requirements. So this is why even in the WHO, they state there's no international mandated EMF radiation standard, but recommends other countries adopt these things, and it's of their own way. So like we saw with the magnetic flux and data, we have to do it as scientists ourselves. And again, when persons do not understand the data, they'll play politics. And that's why we'd rather just use visual data, visual information, because that is what becomes unquestionable. And this is what we see in the Promotion of Equality Act, as we mentioned earlier. It's dated also in the Telecommunications Act, where this is just an extract from an older version of the Act, but I found very useful that pointed very clearly in the images here that you have to have these critical data points. The municipality must check them and test them to ensure that they are there to help enable accountability, transparency, and working together. And so even on the CASA website, you want to apply for location, you have to complete this form, and you have to provide this data on all your cell phone towers or your transmitters, even big or small. So you as a public member or as a municipality are mandated to see, okay, let me see your application form. Did you actually fill it out correctly? Did someone at ICASA do it correctly with you? If not, let's report it to them and see what needs to be corrected. Because when you have that data, one can provide these 3D images to see, okay, this area, it seems, well, there's low signal here, let me attend to it. But we rather want to see how's that signal hitting these buildings? Is there a localized hotspot? So that's what that red zone is over there. Change the numbers, and how is it going to impact each potential person in those areas? Because if you make a complaint to a city health department, you're going to ask them to go for a needle in a haystack to look for something, unless they can do a simulation model beforehand. And it's not just to scare people or to take it away, but when one is requiring to have this information submitted to the telecommunications regulator or the municipality, because those persons also want to look at, have the answers changed from last month or from yesterday to today? Is there different innovation technology we can use to address public complaints? And can we bring about positive change? That is a key thing why this information is very, very important. Again, put here, we've been very honest and frank of, things are not being delivered by municipalities. They are a critical person of the first line of defense. And when a person says no signal, this is, it courses that person get it for free from the US Naval Service of how radiation or propagation moves around. Again, it's a light, it propagates just like sound, and we know there's a shadow zone or blockage or interference. We need to have that information data to cross-check it. And that's vitally, vitally important. So that's why I had a meeting with ICASA. They expressed how, poorly the situation is being attended to. and we need to come with a solution. That is a critical point here. So even our own government facility, we have our own committee members. In our Timber Labs, we have it, the South African Medical Research Council. These transmitters are put in our own government facilities. They were given permission to do it, but did not check the information. So even though these are cited to be the experts, the credible persons, like I said, they are also humans. They are not the ivory tower, and they themselves had not fulfilled these Butler-Payler principles. So we have to address it. That's why I have the report. This is what we found is missing. This is what needs to be addressed to address public complaints. So not only protect the public, but you as a government citizen yourself. So even me, when I met with Eric, and I also in the phone call with Emile, and again, the whole thing what they discuss is that municipalities are a critical line of defense. They are required to check this information. So even when Emile told me, I said, listen, our municipalities do not do this or follow it. And again, I said the difference between Northern Hemisphere Europe versus South Africa, things are different. Her response, one of them was, it's just not done. No, what you're saying cannot be true because in our culture, our environment, this is just not done. It's not practiced. And same like you see on movies where, you know, they say a German person will not drive the car, they don't have a license. But in South Africa, it will be done, or in other parts of the world, it will be done. So cultural aspects or ethics or trust is very important in this aspect, and they would not understand how this is not possible. So even with Eric explained, Eric said that yes, even Netherlands does not have an EMF protection standard. The Ministry of Health does not do regulation or involved. It's done by a telecommunications and electricity generating department. But even with that, municipalities themselves, just the way they are so strict on how permit is given, checking the information, checking the data, avoids a lot of these complaints or misinstallations. And if there is a complaint from the public, it's sent to the regulator, and within 2 weeks, it's answered and addressed, and the telecommunication regulator is very scared to be reported to because there's a standard to approach what are these complaints and how can we deliver upon them. So even with IGNIP, again, people give IGNIP a bad word. They are very blatantly honest of what they do address and what they do not address, and they give advice. Same for WHO. These are all persons giving their advisory committee. But it is you as persons that I need to understand information. That's why I do the report of how to work through the process and have openness and accountability. If a permit applicator or a telecommunications provider comes and says, oh, it's safe, trust me on this, you are not required to believe it. You as government official or municipality or citizen are required to question and say, right, let's look at the data, let's look at the information. Maybe you overlooked something. If you do not know, we as government officials are here to help them. It's our job to train, to update, to provide scholarships, to update these informations. These are critical and key, not to penalize them, but to help. This is the message of the late Desmond Tutu. We are here to help, we are here to grow, we're here to give love in all those soft words. But it's again, that's why he did these scientific diplomatic missions. Very, very important. So yes, we put in here what recommendations to follow, what questions to ask, how to understand information, even the Consumer Protection Act, where are the elements that are provided to support the argument. But again, you have to have the data in order to support the changes and how to change on and how to give it different aspects. And again, persons, any citizen is why they've created equality courts. And equality courts is a way that you can approach as a citizen to find out if a person not addressing me, if my answer not being addressed, I can approach it. I have a right as a citizen to have my voice heard. Even though there's challenges, again, like I said, judges are also not the best environments. They're also affected by the environment. They're not going to make necessarily the decisions you're liking for. And this is why they're pushing more and more to rather use an attorney advocate to do it in the language that they like to make because of metabolic processing in the brain. Change the environment, making conversation is a key thing to getting progress and growth. That is what was stated here very clearly by Judge Sadiwala. We have to work together. We have to accommodate people. We have to have communication together. And we do, and so we put you in this report very clearly of working with the solution, how it can do. So even with, when I spoke with the CEO of South African Human Rights, South Africa, Saliso, And he said, and this is a big thing, they do get money from the Department of Treasury. They do have funds to help with legal arguments or doing court applications. There's a lot of courts in South Africa, they're not being used, there's some politics, but you have to make sure you bring a matter on a national level with them for it to be addressed. However, what we demonstrate here with the photon flux model, it is quicker for you to change the light bulbs in the environment community than to go through the whole court process. Because you're spending time, money, resources, where by changing a light bulb, you can change a community. And that's what's demonstrated here and advised by the WHO and our committee. Again, concluding, this is done with contributions of the people, of foreigner and both domestic and abroad. And this was very helpful to Wilma, who hosted the session today, for helping editorial and putting this together. But even with the learning understanding, we have great scientists in South Africa and abroad working together to want to address these needs, because this is a public thing. It's not just scientific persons, right? It's not just persons of great names and items. We've got South African Human Rights Committee. We've got representatives from the Department of Justice. We've got Yavid, who's part of doing work in NASA. We have Medical Research Council. We have wonderful Anna, who I gave some great works before as part. We have South African Police Services, Department of Agriculture, even, whoops, read my page here. Even Professor Michael Hamlin, who's retired from Harvard, even Heidi also teaches at Harvard and University of Johannesburg, doing these great works of teaching. And like I said, the wonderful thing, we had wonderful Ivan Kulyak, who helped with this whole process of looking, advising, and going through the process. So even when this report was done and published, it does not just get put on a website and ends there. This is where the process is that then I take it to Parliament, all right? It's taken to the national speaker and chairman of the committees, all right? This was taken seriously because this went through, before it could be taken further, 81 different people that looked at this report. This is in Parliament and government working together, right? So, and with that whole looking together and voice of the country, acknowledging it's important, it's a voice of a nation. These are the committee proposed to work together, and let's not start growing this better and better and attend to these issues. These are all very, very important, right? This is like I said, this is Honorable Chairman Froelich of the oversight committees. These are big things. Even the wonderful letter from Ivan Kulyak, who, like I said, co-Nobel Peace Prize, chemical engineering, working together on this process, giving his understanding of, I know things can be difficult, but this is a good model of working together, of changing how we do things differently in the data. These are important things. This is how, even with meeting with these parliamentary members, it does not stop there. It's about moving forward step by step with this whole process. This is a key and critical, right? We want to, oh, my mouse came in. We want to work together on all these solutions. Right, we've gone very long. Unfortunately, we've lost Laszlo. I want to have him come in. Do we have other questions, Q&As, wrapping up here? We'll have those, but I think what's also more important is that having Laszlo and Anna and them is that's why we have the courses. We have the course again in January. I know even the hospital, ICT department, other departments, they want other courses as well in between. So we do these courses to break it down, pragmatic, and so just like you experience yourself in the course. So the webinar is a summary. It's a way of helping debrief everything. And that's what's very important. But I think it was also, we still got here Pierre, we got Dr. Pierre van der Merwe, was also part of it as well. If he can unmute himself and give some inputs from his experience and learning and wisdom, because also, again, he was part of it. He is part of the Voice of South Africa. And I think it'd be grateful to have him give some comments.
That's right. Yeah, so thank you, James. I really enjoyed your talk. I think it's a big responsibility to take such a ship forwards, but I think you're really doing a very practical, great job. I think for me, what stands out is a couple of things. One is that initially when we start the journey, we've got a lot of complaints, a lot of things that we may be not happy with. But I think what becomes clear is that we have to move on to solutions. rather than to complaints. And I think that is for me a very central part. We have to be part of solutions. What can be done? And the second thing for me is to involve the community. That was a very central thing for me to do. So as a neurologist and neuropsychiatrist, obviously I see a huge amount of people that's got headaches and tiredness and fatigue and pain and depression and anxiety and, cognitive complaints, and, the list can go on, And so over time, we initially, James obviously introduced me to a lot of these practical things, and we spent a lot of time in the sea with cold therapy and things like that. But over time, it translated into patients also moving slowly into this environment. And then over time, a lot of people that are enjoying health and wanting more health also added. And then a third group, people that are already just here, seeing us doing it, sort of also added. So we started really a big group, which we called Cold Joy. So it's really made up of a huge amount of people enjoying the nature. So we've got a concept: waking up into joy, waking up into nature, waking up into sort of just the enjoyment of all the amazingness of being together as a group. And I think once we've introduced the practicality, all the things of the enjoyment of saying they're feeling better. They can't even say why they feel better. But once they felt better, then introducing the science behind it became so much an easy task. Then you could tell people, the Schumann's resonance, the circadian rhythms, the effect of a fourth stage of water inside of cells, and mitochondrial health because of this and that. And so I think introducing that, and then when COVID came and they wanted to lock us down, and they locked the beaches down, the people themselves started to mobilize. And they say, you cannot close our beaches. We need, Cold Joy. And so introducing it to that level made my life amazingly interesting, because now I could link the science that we knew with the practicality. So for me, the first principle is don't complain, bring solutions. Second principle is bring in the community with a Pierre principle, of the people first, and then the whole thing of Einstein, we have to adapt. So whatever it's the same exam, but ultimately we end up with new answers because science is evolving. And just from that, I mean, if I look at my friend as a cardiologist, sorry, a lot of birds in the background. So he's a cardiologist. He's starting sports cardiology. Then we're going to follow the people that do the swim, to 12-kilometer swim into the sea, and we're going to swallow pellets to measure the temperature. So it's a knock-on effect. So it's really the growing, but it has to start with science, on giving some answers in a practical level in the community that then forms a chain back to the science and backwards. I've got lots to say more, but I think let's give other people opportunities. So James really being a leader of this has made a massive difference into, I can say, at least 150 people just in the community, just in my environment, at least. Okay, thanks.
Very great, Pierre. Thank you so much for sharing that insight, and again, being a community leader. And that's what's important of sharing on these messages of God, nature, science, religion all together, as per the Pope and Desmond Tutu and many others. Anna, do you have any insights you want to share through this process, since you were, jumped into it and been following for a while and trying different elements, and also from your experience with WHO work in the past and trying to put it into pragmatic application?
Yeah, I don't have too much to say because I'm very new to this. I mean, I'm totally overawed. I can't believe that you can actually pull so many things together. I mean, it's like so many fields of expertise. So for me, it's still, I'm very excited about it all. Yeah, but I'm still a bit out of my depth. I can't imagine. There's just so many things. And so I've got to try and find a few things that would be practical for me to introduce into groups. And, so like starting with the breastfeeding, with the red lights. And so, so for me, those are some of the things, that I'm really excited about. But there is so much. I mean, Yeah, I just don't know how do you, there's so many things I want to get involved in, like making sure people get proper applications for cell phone towers and do all the work they have to do, but I just feel totally overawed. How do you do it? So yeah, so I'm really pleased to be in this group so I can learn. And yeah, so it's yeah, sorry, I can't really give too much more because I haven't done much. So I'm still very new to the game, but excited about it.
So Alan, I'll come to you next. So yeah, and I love what you've done and expressed, but to give an example of the change that you're already making. So for those of you have met maybe Anna before, that she's already made the change. You can see by the clothing apparel she's wearing, because before she used to be always wearing blue clothing, and understanding do the application more today, she's wearing red and green. And the thing is, this explains science called the Tchaikovsky effect. And again, it's how light changes the medium of clothing and why one does not wear the color pink, especially with cancer. But just that simple change, that's why we put in the report of you feel overwhelmed, we want to help you with applications. Like I did with the department, our domain, all these places, just by you walking into a mother's home and taking that orange duct tape and covering the incorrect lights, or getting a different TV, or just putting the algae comb, just these simple basic things of helping the person go, it's really that simple and so cheap. I'm going to do it myself and help you so I don't have to come back again. And you will feel the difference. And like Pierre says, when they feel it, they want to learn, understand more. So it's that simple. So when it comes to cell tower applications, like I said, just have people change the light bulbs. That is what is stated by ICNIM. That's what's stated by WHO Manifesto.
Yeah.
Just like you change your clothes today, you're bio-adapting to the environment, to what is needed, and giving nature that boost.
Yeah, good.
Alan, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, James, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, thanks a million for the presentation. It was really informative. I like the nano bubbles and the orange tape. But just with regards to EMF exposure, particularly in the range of 300 megahertz to 6.5 gigahertz, or up to 10 gigs, depending on if 1998 ICNIRP recommended a public auditory effect level to protect people from microwave hearing. That level is approximately 50 milliwatts per meter squared. That level, that awareness of the public has never been promoted. People haven't been told that there's a microwave hearing effect. Furthermore, EMF Directive 2013/35/EU legally requires all workplaces in the EU, which includes all WHO offices, to conduct EMF risk assessments after the installation of Wi-Fi. But the WHO haven't done that. And schools in the EU zone aren't aware that they have to conduct EMF risk assessments after the installation of Wi-Fi in school, nor are workers aware of the non-thermal dangers posed by our non-thermal exposure from non-ionizing radiation. So, and this is all contained within the EU directive. So I'm just wondering, do you have any insights as to why the World Health Organization haven't promoted sensory effect levels and non-thermal dangers?
Persons with, sorry, I was saying earlier, persons would think of the WHO as an ivory tower. Why are they not doing it? It's, again, it's individual persons. Like Anna's also served with doing these works before, but we have to work together on, we understand the answer change, even the elements of biophysics. I mean, I'll put it with that. These equations, like we've been understanding for the last century, have only recently been, last few years, been very definably demonstrated with newer instruments that are able to help define and confirm much more easier. So that's the one part of, again, it being, showing with the pictures to overcome the politics. The second part is, how do we overcome these persons to learn it and do it more of how to do these elements? What do they mean? Like this year, in March, Eric van Rongen retired from the Ministry of Health. He reached retirement age. And even when I met him, it was the thing of, doing for years, it's harder doing things by yourself. And you have to try get community to understand light first. So like I said, with the microwave hearing, even with the ears, what people misunderstand, they think sound is always about, the hearing is about sound, but actually it's your tinnitus and this microwave hearing is more light in change and impact. And the brain in many cases also can help isolate or overcome these tinnitus effects or frequencies if it has to provide metabolic energy to overcome them. If not, and you have a decreasing system, it's not going to work. So when it comes to ICNIP, you talk about thermal, non-thermal. In the beginning, I defined ICNIP states things very clearly to what they look at and what they do not look at, and what they define and do not define. So again, it's looking at the thermal effects, which is different mathematical equations, different application, interpretation. Also, they state which studies they look at versus not. So it's only epidemiology done in a certain way. So even when you put a study together, you look at it from years ago, different environment, different complexity, using mouse models to humans. Most studies, most ones I've seen, do not apply a factor correction to the data, meaning that mice have a scopic vision, humans have a photonic vision, meaning the covalent bond, or how, on between DHA and retinol or vitamin A is different in strength. So one needs to change the data to the practical application. So what we did, and that's why we focused on this year's projects, is that around the world, like you asked about the EU directives and the risk assessments, we created pragmatic demonstrations in different facilities around the world that's open to the public, meaning that you can go there, you can see, oh, this is what it means like, this is what it means, this is how I feel when I have a terrible, poorly configuration versus a correctly configured environment. And so like we have in our domain, when the person started having the change in lighting, they would then start looking at different Wi-Fi routers, because the Wi-Fi routers would affect how well the oxygen columns would perform and the ability to breathe. And they'll start increasingly disconnecting Wi-Fi routers throughout the residential buildings. The same in the hospital as well. Then, because also what happens with the process, I would point out, you have the software, you click a button, and then you can see how the signal is potentially propagating in the environment with the data that we have on hand, hence the telecommunications one. So what we would see in the environment is that increasingly more and more transmitters would be incorrectly installed. And in so doing, you'd have these localized hotspots forming. But the installers, or the marketing company or telecommunications company that was installing them, puts it on purpose many points as possible, because you're paying a service fee per installation point, whether it's configured correctly or not. So if I only had, say, for a site, had to install 5 transmitters, the guys would go install close to 100, and they would have them in horrible configuration. So what would say, like even other health facility I'm helping now with, they're building a lot of transmitters everywhere, highest speed gigas fiber you can have, but the guys have terrible Wi-Fi signal reception because too many transmitters are creating constructed interference or electromagnetic interference, all because a person did not want to push a button and look at the software configuration. So by having persons experience the environment differently, that's what we get from NASA, changing the environment, easier to change a person to understand the data and the effects and study it. And then from there, we are using science diplomacy of helping people understand this is how science to policy works. This is the areas in between that can be miscommunicated. How can we attend that as quickly as possible? And because technology is caught up more quickly, and COVID's done the wonderful thing of we spend a lot of money, people are frustrated, we've got more access to information, we no longer have the same patience and tolerance for wasted resources as before. So it's, yes, these laws are put into place, and like is referenced in the reports, there's a hyperlink with what is science diplomat. A diplomat or policymaker would put the wording and structure into a document, but they do not understand or training to the technical elements. So the role of a science diplomat, and that's why we're training up and focusing more on training up science diplomats, is to provide the technical information for those policies that have been written. How do we get from A to B and then to Z in the next situation? How do we do it for each unique environment? So I agree with you. There's been a lot of bitching and moaning over the years and a lot of different elements. But if a person does not understand, we have to find a way of how can we communicate? How can we simplify the language? Like me, when I first started this, I'm thinking, cool, science word. Let me look at all the jargon words, use them, biophysics, lasers, astronomy. and talk to a group of people, you're gonna think, James, I cannot understand a word you're saying. Yes, it's all science, it works, and math is there, but I'm not getting it. So then I go back at, okay, what is the message that Tutu was explaining? What did he say with, me being put into this role?